Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th episode of the Knowledge Nest. Today is May 3rd, it's the beginning of May, and it is the last week of the semester. So, yay, congratulations to all of those of you who are graduating. Today with me, I have Jamie Bridges, who is in the Early Childhood Education program of the Education Department, correct? What is that the right name of your program?
Yes, the Early Childhood Education.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. And she's going to talk about early childhood reading with me and education in general, and a little bit about herself. Last weekend we had the CSI open house, which was very well attended. Thank you all of you who came to that. We had a lot of people who came. We had about 100 people who take part in the mini golf, and we had over 1,000 people, yay, who participated in the open house in general. There were a ton of people there, weren't there? It was pretty intense. We are so happy about that. We're going to do that next year. We might even add a few more holes on the mini golf course, according to what Ross tells me. So thank you for participating in that. Also coming up, we have in the summer our next book club. So we're going to be reading again The Seven Husbands of, I forgot the title, but it's going to be a fantastic book club. Ross just put a Facebook post up about that. So without any further ado, we're going to proceed with our interview with Jamie Bridges. So, welcome. What was your favorite childhood book?
One of the classics called Love You Forever
by
Robert Munsch.
Yes.
That one's just a great book. I remember as a child all the time just opening up and just looking at the pictures, really not even reading it, but just looking at the pictures and being fascinated by the baby who's throwing the toilet paper off and spilling toothpaste everywhere.
Yes.
And just having this joy of like, I want to do that.
Yes.
Not being able to do that. But there's also a book too that as a parent, you continue to love that book. It's one of those rare gems where children and adults love it.
Yes. It was even featured on Friends. Have you seen the Friends episode? Yeah. Joy reads it out loud. It was one of my favorite books too as a kid. It was just it's such a happy book, At the open house we had two people, President Fisher and Mons Sakmaganya, and also Clark Rainey. So three people, 2 sessions of people reading children's books. So this is kind of why we're doing this. I talked a little bit last week about early childhood reading. So it's just kind of a thing that happens. Like it seems kind of a natural part of parenting that you read to your kids. You have these childhood books.
Important.
Yes. Well, and you were able to remember kind of looking at the pictures. Like even as a young kid, even now you remember doing that when you were younger. It's a formative thing. What on that note, what is the importance of reading in the context of childhood education? Why is it a vital part of education?
Well, especially in early childhood, it's really important for children to be read to over even reading. As that skill will come, children will learn how to read. Unless they have some severe special need, they're going to learn how to read by the time they're adults. It's going to happen. And really the focus should be on children loving reading. And that happens when a caring and loving adult is reading and sharing books with children. They're sitting together and just enjoying reading books and telling stories. And that's so important. So if you have children or grandchildren, read books with them. Just enjoy that time spent together going through and reading books. And it's absolutely okay to read a book 100 times.
Yes.
With very little children, they will read books and want to read the same book over and over and over again. And that's actually great for their brain development.
Okay, yeah. So you can't just plop down a book and say, read this to a 2-year-old. You have to read it yourself. To kind of train them, give them a model to follow, basically.
And books have a lot of that fluency and rhyming. Oral stories is amazing, too, to just tell stories to your children. It's kind of an art form that has been lost over the years. But it's so important for children who will learn to love reading later to be told stories to when they're younger.
Okay, so kind of engage them in narratives of all types of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that kind of related to why you should be exposing children to sounds and music and a lot of different things so they can get kind of used to that?
Yes, and for little ones it's actually how they learn to talk and learn to develop language. The more that they are read to and shared with stories and rhymes at a very young age, like infants and toddlers, they will then learn to talk and speak and communicate better, quicker, and faster.
Okay.
And have a better understanding of language even all the way through elementary school.
Okay. Huh. So how did the library or books affect your childhood development and your love of reading?
Well, I was actually blessed when I was little to grow up around the United States. So I've had a chance to visit dozens and dozens of different libraries all around America and see a bunch of different models of how different libraries look. And so I spent quite a bit of time in different variety of libraries all over the United States. And that, I think, just helped me to love books, but also just to have books be a normal thing. Books were always a normal part of my childhood, so they're still a normal part now as an adult, because it was a normal thing to have lots of books around when I was little, and the same is now for an adult as well. It just kind of continues. So to expose children to books is super important, and to take them to libraries and see, like, wow, look at all of these books. Like, there's a lot of books in a library, and it's not just a handful that you might have at your house.
Yes. No. I remember when I went to, we had a branch library that was like 2 minutes away from our house when I was a kid. And then one time my mom brought us, that one was closed, so she brought us to the main branch, and it was massive, like 3 floors. I was like, this is amazing, I had no idea this existed. And then when I discovered the Library of Congress, my mind was like, what? So yes, all different types of libraries. And you get all different types of viewpoints at different libraries of things, because they have different emphases, different ways they arrange things.
Oh yes, yeah, the arrangements were always, I loved looking at how they set up a library and all the different ones and how they would do it. It was really interesting to see.
With all the little displays and stuff.
Yes.
So how do you encourage early childhood literacy in the early childhood education courses?
We actually have an entire class devoted to it called Introduction to Children's Literature.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we have an entire class, a whole one that talks just about how to identify children's literature and to read with children and enjoy it. I mean, we have an entire class devoted to it.
Oh, wow.
But we also do it quite a bit. I teach curriculum and practicum classes, and so the college students will come in and they'll learn the importance of literacy with children, and they get a chance to practice it with children. Like, how do you do reading with kids on an individual basis, a small group, large group, and practice with it. In particular, in the classes that I teach, college students will get a chance to learn what a flannel board story is, how to do puppet shows, how to do oral stories with children, to use story bags, how to do writing that's meaningful with children, and how to do learning outside in nature, like how do you do literacy outside, and book reading outside.
So that's a pretty intense class.
Yeah, so they're the funnest classes because you get to actually do it with children. But so they get a lot of practice and a lot of knowledge about literature with children.
Awesome. Can I audit that class? That would be the best class.
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely. Everyone should audit it.
I have to do like a background check or something, right? Because that's pretty. But that would be awesome. And so I guess to kind of back up a bit on that class about identifying children's literature, what criteria do you use to identify children's literature? Is like a certain number of words or a certain like vocabulary range?
To identify what's a good children's literature?
Or what is children's? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So we talk about a variety. So there's like board books for toddlers, like the hard ones that they're not going to rip the pages out of because they're little. And then there's the picture books. Right, and so the picture books have all the pictures in it, and you can do that from preschool all the way up to like 3rd grade. Like there's a lot of detailed reading in some picture books, and then they move into more like chapter books, beginning chapter books, and other ones. And so it'll cover actually all of those as well. And this one, Intro to Children's Lit, is particularly for birth through 3rd grade. So it'll cover the kind of that range of reading. As well.
And on that note, what you brought up, what is a good children's literature book? Like what should we be looking for when we're looking for children's literature?
Something that has a story, a plot is really good for it as well. There's a lot of great rhyming books. A lot of people like books that rhyme for children, which are great to have, but I think it's almost overdone, where you don't want every book just to be like every single word is rhyming.
Yes.
Sometimes it just needs to tell a story, something that will engage children. Even going back to like classics, like The Three Billy Goats Gruff.
Yes.
That's a classic from hundreds of years old that still today engages children into the story. So stories that will just really pull a child in, instead of trying to always like teach them something, but just something they will enjoy.
Yes. Not everything has to be a teaching moment. It's really good. That's awesome. This is kind of related, I guess. How can people find out more about the topic from you or other resources that you highly recommend, like websites and and things.
Yes. So for children's literature, the Lee Pesky Center has a lot of great trainings for teachers for learning how to teach literature to children. And really, if you Google it, you can find tons of books. Like, the 10 best books on nature, the 10 best books about a family member that passed away, the 10 best books about apples, So, like, you can find, if you just Google it, any topic or interest that you're in to find good quality books for children.
Okay. The Lee Pesky Center?
Lee Pesky Learning Center.
Lee Pesky Learning Center.
They do some amazing literature conferences.
Okay, that's awesome. What are some things, or how do you assess childhood literacy, if you do it at all?
We do in our program. We use a couple of different models for early childhood, but we use High Scope program, and they have a whole assessment on literature to see our children growing in their listening skills, in their writing skills, reading. How many words can they read, or can they write a sentence yet? For young children. We also use the work sampling system, which goes to a little bit older, so up through third grade, so past the preschool age, to assess. Because every school, so they have different ways to assess reading in children. But the work sampling system and the High Scope core are really great because they're very natural, and it's not like a test, a worksheet for a little child to fill out, but it's very play-based and project-based, like watching children actually do it and then seeing what knowledge they know based on what they're doing. And so we do assess it, because there's a whole growth system from birth through third grade on what they're going to be learning and growing in.
My wife is a speech pathologist, and so I knew about kind of like the communication and language stuff, but I never thought about like literacy being a process that you develop. That's really cool.
It starts at birth, and and then it starts going. And there's even research before birth. They're starting to learn and pick those things up, right? And so it's this whole process that just builds and builds on each other.
That's awesome. So literacy is important at any age. That is fantastic. That is amazing. Yeah. What are some things that you wish you would have known kind of through your literacy, or maybe just in your career development? What are some things you wish you would have known as a student?
Well, I actually went through this program as a student before I worked here.
Okay.
So I had a lot of that I got a chance to learn as a student before I came back and taught here. But I would have liked to know more about literacy in nature and how to do it outside more. All of the current research, children need to be outside more and more, up to 6 hours a day for healthy development. And most children are not. They're getting maybe an hour a day outside. And so how can we do these literacy activities the same time that we're doing nature? Right, at the same time. And there's so many strategies and wonderful activities out there that I had no idea as a student, or even up to 5 years ago, I didn't even know.
Oh, wow.
But we're finding more and more books on it, more and more research that really just talk about literacy outside of nature. Okay,
that's cool. And that's reading and speaking and all sorts of stuff.
And writing, rhyming, everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, let me find that. I don't know how you can mute your phone, but I should have muted my phone. What advice do you have for students who come into the library, and what about students who... Oh, did I ask you that one?
Yeah. So sometimes it helps to have a book that you're looking for particularly that you can then go find, because I feel like sometimes it's very daunting just to wander up and down the aisles and being like, what's even here?
Yes.
So sometimes I have a book, or even a type of book or a genre, something very specific. And then I feel like for students not to be afraid to ask someone at the desk and be like, hey, I'm looking for this. Can you kind of show me where to go? Because sometimes it is, or we don't have a lot of time to just wonder and try to figure it out. Students are very busy.
Yes.
So I would say some advice would just be not to be afraid to come in and ask and see if they have the book. And especially if you're looking at being a teacher or early childhood or parenting books, you guys have a bunch of those here. You just got a whole bunch in.
Yes.
And so there's amazing books here, amazing resources at the library.
Okay. Yeah. I think I remember why I included that question for you. When you're talking to parents about like what books they should get for their children, like are there specifics, like you talk about types of books, but are there specific genres that are especially important for the young children to read or be exposed to, beyond like just having a narrative and things?
For young children, the picture books is really important. Having the illustrations is so important for children to keep them engaged and really for them to come up with their own stories with it. Wordless books are a fantastic genre for young children because they have the pictures but no words. And
Okay.
so then when you're reading with the child, you're actually working together to come up with a story. And you're talking a lot about the books. There's a lot of language going back and forth between the adult and the child to develop and create their own story based on the pictures.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so wordless books are wonderful books to have for children.
Okay. What advice, I already asked you that one. What books have shaped your career the most?
I would say one of the biggest one is Nurture Shock.
Okay.
Paul Bronson and Ashley Merriman. That's just a classic early childhood books, and it covers topics of everything. It's actually more of a parenting book.
Okay.
But as an educator, we use the information and the research. I mean, it's got like 30 pages of research at the back of just lists of all the things. Like, they did a lot of research when creating this book.
Okay.
And it covers everything about like why your child might lie to you, to sibling rivalry, or why your teenagers need more sleep. Like, it has different topics, and it's just a great book to be like, oh yeah, like light bulb, like this makes total sense.
Okay. Okay.
So that's a great one.
Okay, and it's called Nurture Shock? Nurture Shock.
Nurture Shock.
Okay. If you could have and this is kind of fun, if you could have basically a massive message to everybody about education, about anything, what would that be? It could be a quote or something you have developed. What message would you want to share with everybody?
To tie it into literature, I would probably say something like read, write, and tell stories outside in nature.
Okay.
So just really get people thinking about, oh, you can do this, or how do you do this, as well. Just to read, write, tell stories out in nature, like while you're going for hikes and walks.
Uh-huh.
There is a quote from Kathy James that I really enjoy from more of a teacher's perspective.
Okay.
But anything you teach in an indoor classroom can be taught outdoors, often in ways that are more enjoyable to children.
Okay.
And that's really a motto I live by.
Okay, so kind of make it a natural part of your day to go outdoors, basically.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to make it a project. That's really cool. Huh.
Yeah.
I remember and my mom was really good about this, but especially like during classes, like it was always like, okay, now we're going to go out into nature and I'm going to force you to remain out here for 3 hours, but just make it more of a fluid, like this is what we're doing because we always do it. Okay.
So even like your nighttime routine, especially now that it's warming up in the evening time, if you're reading books to your children before bed, which every parent should be doing, it's super important to read books to children before bed, but instead of doing it inside, go sit outside on the porch or on a swing, on a hammock, and read your books outside and then go inside and go to bed.
Okay.
It's just a natural everyday part of your routine. Simple changes that don't require a lot of work from the parent, but can be very effective for children's learning.
Okay, nice. What is the book or information resource you have given most as a gift and why? Or if you haven't, what book would you give to people?
The one I usually give the most is actually called The Happiest Baby on the Block by Harvey Karp.
Okay.
Because it's a book I recommend for all new mothers.
Okay.
So in my degree, I work with a lot of parents that are having babies. But it really talks about how to help soothe the baby and calm a baby after they're born, so that you're not up all night with a crying baby, because that's no fun. And it talks about the 5 S's on how to do that in soothing a child. And it works fantastic, like every time. Like almost every single baby responds well to it, and so it's just very effective. So I recommend that.
I will have to
for all new parents.
Look at that book soon. Okay, that'll be awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to say before we close out?
In regards to early childhood literacy, it just needs to always be fun for children, and it should never be stressful for young children. Like I mentioned earlier, they're going to learn how to read. And that's not an issue. So for some children, it's at 3. For some children, it's not to age 8. And that's totally normal for brain development.
Okay.
And so just to have fun with literacy, that's so important for young children. Just to have fun with it, to read books, to tell stories, to play games, instead of it being like sit down and test or do your homework. Like, make it fun for children, because that's going to develop a lifelong love of learning. And adults that will love learning and love reading and love getting more knowledge and being problem solvers, compared to those who are like, I just hate reading, I can't read another book. We don't want that kind of attitude for children. We want them to love reading. And so the best way to do that is just to have it be fun and not stressful.
Okay.
And then that also for the adult, that's nice too, because I'd rather have fun and not be stressed about children reading either.
Exactly.
And so just be relaxed about it.
Okay. Well, and they'll hopefully pass that on to their kids and then their kids, and that'll be awesome.
Generations of learners.
Well, and hopefully, like, I remember reading with my siblings when they were younger. Like having help. So build a family that loves reading. This has been so awesome. I learned so many things, which is why I do these interviews, half of the reason, because I learned so much.
Yeah.
So, and Jamie was my first faculty interview outside of the library, so this went really well, I think. And
yes, I really appreciate you inviting me over.
yeah, no, thank you very much. And to our viewers, I will see you in probably another week, obviously, but I'll probably be talking about how to prepare for the summer and study techniques you can use to research over the summer and not lose your love of learning. So, have a good week.